Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Poets of the Fall, titled Jealous Gods. You know, there are some bands that when you look through their discography or their charting singles, you wonder why on God's green earth they became famous whatsoever. Because even bucking the trends of the time, even without a catchy or interesting or even good song to their names, there are some acts that will somehow manage to rise to the top of the charts. I don't get it. And then 5 years later, people look back on that time and wonder, why the hell did these guys become remotely popular? I don't get it. And then there's the opposite case. A musical act that, for all intents and purposes, they should have been huge. Maybe the trends were on their side. Maybe they had infinitely catchy hooks. Maybe they just made awesome music and developed a real hardcore fan base. And yet, for no discernible reason, they never blew up in the mainstream the way they should. And we're going to be talking about one of those bands today. The Finnish alternative rock and metal act Poets of the Fall. Now, these guys released their first album, Signs of Life, back in 2005, and ever since then have been releasing record after record of quality music that pretty much encapsulates everything I like about great alternative rock and metal. They had a fantastic melodic focus, and the instrumental heft to really back it up. They wrote great hook-driven songs with introspective and emotionally compelling lyrics, and lead vocalist Marco Seresto had one of the most compelling and expressive voices in the genre, a rich, liquid baritone capable of both real grit and impressive melody. So you have to ask, why didn't Poets of the Fall become huge in the United States? Well, I've got a few ideas. The first being that the band opted for more of a sophisticated and melodic presence in their music when alt-rock and metal at the time was going in the exact opposite direction. And with the decline of mainstream rock radio, look, I'm not exactly surprised that Poets of the Fall never blew up beyond Finland. Now, the other thing, and this is coming from a fan of the band who thinks that they've never really made a bad album, is that Poets of the Fall never really made a consistent album. On their early output, especially their third record, Revolution Roulette, was pretty uneven as the band worked to strike a balance between gorgeous melodic ballads and their more hard-edged material, the stuff that was more likely to get radio play. But in 2012, the band seemed to finally hit that sweet spot with Temple of Thought, a strikingly potent release that fused their melodic focus with a lot of sweeping heaviness that made that album one of the best of the year and a personal favorite of mine. So you can bet that I was hotly anticipating their newest album, Jealous Gods. So how is it? Honestly, I'm a little conflicted about this album. Now let me stress that Jealous Gods is a fantastic album, one that shows plenty of artistic innovation and still maintains that Poets of the Fall sound that I really do love. And yet, this is a bit of a tricky album to analyze because we're looking at the band's lightest, breeziest, and most mainstream-friendly record to date instrumentally. And paradoxically, their lyrics are just as cryptic and intricate as always, even though when you start to decode them, the subject matter doesn't appear all that weighty or heavy. In fact, I was almost convinced that this was Poets of the Fall's attempt at pop melodrama. You know, they kind of nailed that and managed to sneak in some subtle commentary in it on the way. In other words, I see a lot of direct parallels with Icon for Hire's self-titled alternative metal album last year. And like that album, Jealous Gods by Poets of the Fall is one of the best albums of this year. And yet I suspect for some longtime Poets of the Fall fans, it would be one of the more controversial entries in their discography, even though I really dig it. You see, the funny thing is that after the first few listens, you wouldn't think this album is that far removed from traditional Poets of the Fall, at least in terms of instrumentation and production. The electric guitar tones are clear with just enough reverb to really shimmer across the mix. The acoustic instrumentation has plenty of texture. The rhythm guitar has rollicking crunch I really like. And the keyboards lay a fantastic foundation for the melodic progressions. And yet, from the very first track, Days, the swirl of electronic effects becomes very audible. And it also becomes apparent that Poets of the Fall are making one of the slickest, cleanest albums of their career. And while I can see some hardcore metalheads calling this record a little bit poppy, I'm honestly not against that shift. Poets of the Fall have always had a clean, soaring, anthemic brand of production, and with Marco Seresto singing with more of his clean vocals throughout this album, it's a natural fit. It helps that the electronic elements are tastefully added, never really feel tacked on. Instead, gentle support for the melodic progressions or the drums, which thankfully have not been replaced with drum machines and still provide a lot of well-balanced presence on tracks like Rumors and Love Will Come to You. Now that being said, this is definitely Poets of the Fall's most acoustic-leaning album to date, with the heavy strums opening up Brighter Than the Sun, the indie folk leanings of Love Will Come to You, the well-picked guitar balanced against the strings on Reverb or Nothing Stays the Same. Now that's not saying that there isn't some energetic heaviness, the sweeping power of Jealous Gods, Rumors, Hounds to Hamartia, or Clear Blue Sky, or the explosive guitar solos at the end of Nothing Stays the Same or Brighter Than the Sun, or the rough-edged instrumental Rogue, which shows that the band still has some real serious chops. songs. Even this album doesn't really deliver another heavy track in the vein of like Psychosis from Revolution Roulette. But of course, the song that fans will be most bitterly divided upon is Choice Millionaire. And it's easy to see why. The prevalence of shimmering synthesizers and echoing keyboards, even with the guitars coming in mostly at the back, is a song designed to evoke swirling images of icy Europop, and on that standard, it's actually pretty damn good. Part of it is the slick production being able to so effectively mimic that genre, but the larger factor is the sheer attitude that Marco brings to the vocals. The chorus and bridge all are in his power, but the verse is a crisp spoken word that's more reminiscent of Lady Gaga than anything else, and I mean that as a compliment. And for what it is, all artifice and style and succumbing to empty thrills, honestly, I find the song pretty damn effective. If I were to take an issue with it, it'd be a more common issue that most people have with Poets of the Fall, and that's Marco's falsetto. It's a divisive point among Poets of the Fall fans, and I will go on record saying that I don't like his falsetto as much as his mid-range, but it honestly doesn't bug me that much as his nasal cackle can, which is mostly absent on this record entirely. But his voice on this album is as clean and rich as ever, and is responsible for some of this album's most potent high notes, the best being on the chorus of Jealous Gods, which sends a chill down my spine every single time I heard it. I love that song. But now let's get into lyrics and themes. And let's make this clear. Poets of the Fall are the kind of songwriters I really like on principle alone. Intricate lyrics loaded with classical references, rich dramatic imagery, and yet show enough of a knack for a killer chorus and hook. But on this album, Poets of the Fall opted to be a little bit more oblique with their wordplay. The killer choruses, they're still there, but they don't always appear to make a lot of sense upon your first listen, or appear all that straightforward upon a second or third listen. And when you do start to decode the lyrics, they seem a little bit more overwrought for some of the subject matter. I mean, a breakdown in trust in a relationship on the title track can be spanned by building bridges of rainbows, a new bifrost to span across the void. Rumors describes the titular words like a wildfire capable of death. Brighter than the sun are words used to describe the woman that the narrator admires. Love will come to you spares no expense in showing all the horrid torture the other person in the song might endure before love actually manages to come through. Reverb is positively biblical in describing what you must do to hold on to love, and Hounds of Harmatia evokes Greek tragedy. It's clear that when the soaring whirlwind of Clear Blue Sky is lyrically one of the more sober tracks on the album, because the poetry everywhere else is so hyperbolic in describing the feelings, and it's all being sold with complete sincerity. It would be so easy to see it all as high camp, because what are such weighty words doing on such concepts that are really just so lightweight and pop? And then you realize that's the point. Choice Millionaire, that's the first salvo. A straight up Europop song all about surrendering to that empty glamour because, to quote, nobody needs more confessions. And the sarcasm bleeding through Marco's voice says it all. All that hyperbole around trifling subject matter can feel so empty. And the album ends on a dark note with Nothing Stays the Same, pointing at the people who would see such hyperbole and exploit it for cheap thrills for the masses, with no soul behind it, and how it makes him sick, knowing that whenever sorrow calls my name, I know nothing stays the same. It's a lyric showing that he won't have peace. And yet throughout this album, he still tries, he still goes forward, and he pursues real earnest emotion and love, because to him, that's real. It might seem over the top, but it's honest. It lends it a power that nothing can break. And it shows that even subject matter that's so decidedly pop, really human, can be elevated into something more with real conviction. Hell, even the straight up nihilism of Choice Millionaire has a certain seductive quality that most Europop wishes it could pull off. And the crazy thing is that the song and the band knows that it has that seductive power. And it doesn't make a certain amount of sense that the band references Norse, Greek, and biblical tragedy and titled the album Jealous Gods. Not just because the band plays the songs at that level of sweep and epic intensity and manages to pull it off, but because when you break it down, it's all just human drama, and when displayed properly, it can earn that epic sweep and drama that is entitled in Jealous Gods. In other words, this album could easily be seen as melodramatic or silly, but it brings a level of intensity, power, and a real human element to the conflicts that really makes it work for me. It's an album that reminds me not just of Icon for Hire's self-titled album, but Strange Desire by Bleachers, another album that I love more and more every time I listen to it, because it manages to elevate human drama to epic scale, and has the sincerity and intellectual heft to really back it up. And Jealous Gods by Poets of the Fall is even better than Strange Desire, a killer slice of some of the band's best work that manages to be thematically cohesive and extraordinarily powerful. In other words, it's a 9 out of 10 for me and the highest of my recommendations. Folks, I can't say this strongly enough. Go out and get this album. It's really something special. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Seriously, guys, go and get this album. It's amazing. Yeah, if there's any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, or there's anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.